The 2024-2025 Premier League season is just a couple weeks away, so I figure there's no better time than now to make my predictions. I reacted to my predictions from last season and ended up getting 54 places wrong. Like, I was off by 54 places in terms of correct, like, table. This was the table if you're so interested. You could go and check these videos out if you so please. But I was very, very off. And so I'm going to try to do better than that now for this upcoming season. I have a lot to kind of dissect and dive into. So as always, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, like the video if you end up enjoying, and comment down below, who do you think is going to get relegated? Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is getting top 4 in European Cup spots for the 25-26 season and all that good stuff? So let's dive right into it with the bottom of the league. 20th place. Who do I think is going to get 20th place? And I hate to be that guy, but honestly, I think it's going to be Southampton. Southampton are a side who I was looking at the way that they're set up, and while they have, some players throughout the squad that I think have some potential, that I think they've even made some good transfers. They signed Sugawara from AZ Alkmaar. They have Gavin Bazunu in goal. They have, brought back Adam Lallana, who I don't think will feature a lot. But amongst that squad, there is a certain lack of quality amongst those players. I don't think that there's necessarily a player that is at Southampton currently that can get you a guaranteed double-digit return in terms of goals. That's an issue. And pair that with a defense that I don't think is necessarily going to be, holding any sort of candle to, say, Everton from last season or Arsenal's defense from last year. A lot of factors are in play. We know that more recently in the last couple of seasons, the teams that get promoted usually go back down. And I think, at least in the case of Southampton, that's going to be the case for the 24-25 season. So now the other two teams that I think are in the relegation zone, I go with 19th first, and then I'll put 18th in front of them. But 19th is Leicester. Another kind of maybe obvious inclusion. I think Leicester. I know I mispronounce it all the time. People are going to be upset in the comments. Leicester are a side that, they've won the Premier League in the last decade. They've been a side who have, been at the top, been at the bottom. They've seen it all, really. And this does feel like it probably will be Jamie Vardy's swan song in the Premier League. So maybe, the power of friendship can keep them afloat. But I do feel like besides, Vardy, Wilfred Ndidi, maybe Ricardo Pereira, and a few other players who are probably still past their best, in my opinion. There's only like one or two players that really move me in this side. Mavididi, I think, is going to be really good for them. But I just think at the back with Wout Faes and some other center backs, it's really a hodgepodge team. It's not necessarily as strong as I remember Leicester being. They've obviously lost Enzo Maresca as well, which will be a big blow. I'm not saying that Steve Cooper is an incompetent coach, but if you have one coach who has his whole system and structure, and then you kind of pluck one of the best players for that system, Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, and sell him on to Chelsea, and then you lose the head coach, I feel like a lot of that kind of hard work is undone. So I think they're going to go back down in 19th. And for 18th, this is where it gets tricky. There's a lot of teams that I could put here, and I think it's going to be a close relegation scrap for this upcoming season. But in 18th, I'm going to go for Nottingham Forest. Yep, Nottingham Forest, I think they're going to finish 18th. Why? Quite frankly, I just, they almost got relegated last year, Nottingham Forest, and it was kind of weird. They had the points deduction, which obviously didn't help. And if we're looking at Everton, who've now had 2 consecutive years of points deductions and have stayed up in both years, that might mean that Forest could get more points deductions in the future. I know Everton, maybe they do too, but at least in Forest's case, I think there's a more likely possibility, and I'm just speculating entirely based on the fact that Everton had 2 consecutive seasons like that. They haven't signed too many players that have impressed me. Hardly stayed up. Don't know how they're really gonna kick on this season. Don't expect them to really hit a new level under Nuno Espirito Santo. So I'm gonna put them in the relegation zone. So that's that for the relegation zone. So who will be in 17th, right above the relegation zone? I think it's Brentford. And hear me out. I know people are already in the comments like, but they have Brian Mbuemo, but they have Ivan Toney, but they have Yona Wissa. Yes, but they also played really poor last season. They still have one of the shoddiest defenses in the league. Their defense is horrible. Their midfield is anonymous at times, and let's be real, Tony doesn't want to be there. Does Mbuemo want to be there? Maybe. Yonaisa, maybe. It just feels like, if you stay in the league long enough, you develop a malaise. And that's what's happening with Brentford right now. They're lazy in terms of the sense of a lot of their star players, they want to go. There's not necessarily moves for them to go. There's this kind of apathetic feeling around the club, at least from the outside looking in. Maybe I'm wrong, Brentford fans, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure Ben Mee's injured too. There hasn't been a lot of major improvements to the squad. They haven't even changed their home kit, which, isn't the end of the world, but it adds to this kind of feeling of, is Brentford really going to do anything? I think they're just going to stay up. I think people will be surprised by how poor they are. 1 or 2 injuries could really undo their season dramatically. And they didn't have the easiest time staying up last year. Even when Tony was back, they weren't playing necessarily the best football. So 17th for Brentford. 16th, I'm going to go with Ipswich Town. Ipswich Town, why would I put them here? They play a very exciting brand of football, and now they are officially, they've been promoted back-to-back seasons from, League One to the Championship, now to the Premier League. I think they're going to stay up. Simple as that. They have some good players, Connor Chaplin, Leif Davis. I think they're both really going to catch the eye of a lot of teams around the Premier League come, say, October, November, December area. By then, they'll be known a lot more around the league. I think that Kieran McKenna staying is a huge plus. And, why not? I don't want all 3 teams to get relegated that got promoted. So this is my best way of kind of predicting it in terms of if one of them is going to stay up. I think it's going to be Ipswich, just based on the fact that they have, you can make the argument that maybe Leicester had, under Maresca and under that kind of championship side, the ability to play a brand of football to stay up. You can make the argument that Southampton just simply are not good enough to stay up. But with Ipswich, they have that structure, they are good, and they still have the coach intact, so I think they will stay up. Moving forward to 15th, and this might be another controversial pick, but hear me out here. I'm putting Fulham in 15th because they've been in the Premier League now a couple of seasons. Marco Silva's still at the wheel, so I don't think they're necessarily getting relegated or at threat of anything like that. But they have lost Joao Palhinha, they have lost Tosin Adarabioyo, and they haven't replaced either of them. In terms of signings that they have done, Ryan Sessegnon from Tottenham signing on a free. You also have Emil Smith-Rowe joining for like 32 million, 35 million maybe, around there for Arsenal, from Arsenal to Fulham. So it's like none of these signings are necessarily positive. They are at best lateral moves, especially for that Smith-Rowe fee. That's an overpay. Let's be real. He's hardly featured for Arsenal for like a year and a half. If he gets injured, that's bad news for Fulham. Who knows if Willian's staying. They have two real, I'd say, bright spots in their team, and that's in goal and up top. Bernd Leno, fantastic goalie, criminally underrated, I'd say, in the Premier League. And then Muniz, their forward, he's really made a name for himself as a 9 for Fulham. I think they'll both just do enough to keep him up, but the rest of the squad around them is really tragic, I'd say. So I think they're really going to taper off, and not this season, but maybe next season they could be real relegation threaten people. I think they're just going to be safe or thereabouts from that conversation. Next up is 14th. I'm putting in Bournemouth, another side who hasn't made a ton of moves. Not a lot of sides have made moves. That's something to kind of harp on. But also, there's links that potentially Solanke leaves. If he does, that's horrible news. I think this team will make some steps like forward in the first half of the season. Second half of the season, I think they'll kind of taper off. Don't be surprised if you see someone like, I don't know, Kirkez or Waltara just really getting a ton of goal contributions this season. I could see it totally happening. Semenyo as well. Keep an eye on him. But I do think that Bournemouth will get a lot of steam up until maybe the holidays. And then around there, fixture congestion, injuries, this, that, the other will kind of impact them. They'll be in a gray area for like the midpoint of the season. Then they'll claw their way back up to like a kind of okay, half okay finish at 14th. Next up is the last of the bottom half, 13th place. I'm putting in Wolves. Wolves also haven't made a ton of signings. They've sold Kilman to West Ham. Besides that, like they have, I think, Tommy Doyle from City they've wrapped up a deal for. Like they finalized that deal, I should say. What to say about Wolves? Wolves were cool at points last season. I think Gary O'Neill proved that he is at least a competent coach. I don't think he's necessarily a like world class coach, but he's decent, you know, at least decent enough to be like a mid table, maybe bottom half Premier League side. But my issue with Wolves is that they finished last season really poorly. They haven't made any investments either in the way of like somebody that you're going to like really look at and be like, wow, that's like a really good move. I think that bad form will carry on into the first half of the season. They'll find their footing eventually. I don't think Cooper is going to Gary O'Neill's going to get sacked. But I do think that this squad and this version of this squad is lacking in some areas of the pitch. Primarily probably in midfield and at the back. There's some good players there, Cunha, Pedro Neto, that can make an impact, but I just don't see it happening for Wolves this season like that. Next up, the first of the mid-table, 12th place, I'm going for Everton. Everton had the fourth best defense last season, only behind Arsenal, Liverpool, and City. They're an incredible side defensively. They're resolute. They've kept Branthwaite, which is a huge kind of plus for them. I'm a Liverpool fan, so that kind of pains me. They signed Jake O'Brien from Lyon, Irish center back who has some pretty good potential. He should help them a lot at the back as well. They've signed Lindstrom from Napoli, I believe only on a loan, but regardless, still a good deal. There's like at least one other player that I'm forgetting now that they've signed. I'm gonna try to remember. Actually, let me look up who the last player I'm forgetting for Everton is, because they've made some good business of this window. They've done some good deals. They're not necessarily in a spot where I think Ndie, that's the one I want to talk about, and Iro Boonman from Aston Villa. Tim Iroboomman, he's like a youngster prospect, decent attacking mid, and he should help. But Iliman Ndie played for Sheffield 2 seasons ago, didn't have the best season at Marseille last year, but this season I think I could see him getting like anywhere from like 7 to 10, 12 maybe goal contributions in the league, and that could be a huge bolster to their front line for Everton. They don't score a lot of goals, but I could see them scoring just a bit more, keeping that defensive structure, and without potentially any points deductions, no reason they can't finish 12th. 11th place, we're going for Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace obviously have sold Michael Olise. They have Oliver Glasner at the wheel now. He's coaching after obviously Roy Hodgson stepped down earlier this year. I believe it was February he stepped down. But Oliver Glasner, since he's come into Crystal Palace, they've been playing an incredible brand of football. It's silky to watch. It's entertaining to see. It gets results too. So in a way, this is maybe selling them a little short, but if they manage to keep Olise, if they manage to kind of keep Mark Yehi is now linked to a move to Newcastle, according to David Ornstein. I think they'd be in a way better position to maybe even compete for like a Conference League spot or something. But they are going to be, potentially without Mark Yehi going into the season, who is a huge presence at the back for them. And they have obviously sold Michael Olise to Bayern. They haven't replaced Michael Olise directly. They brought in Daichi Kamada, who previously played under Oliver Glasner at Frankfurt. I just feel like they're not really going to do much this season. It's going to be a Crystal Palace year again. We'll get some kind of new variant of a Crystal Palace, but I don't think it's going to be new and improved. So 11th feels fair. 10th place. Maybe another controversial one. West Ham. Why would I put West Ham here? They aren't necessarily in any European competitions. They have some really good players. Bowen, Kudus, they're linked to signing, I believe they just signed Crescencio Somerville from Leeds. They're linked to signing Fulkrug potentially. If they do, I would maybe give them a couple places up, maybe one or two spots up on the table, but it's going to be a competitive top half and race for Europe. And while I think West Ham has some great players, I do think there is kind of like a ceiling to their quality. Lopetegui's there this season. I'm not necessarily like sold on him or the idea of him as a coach too much. I think he's just okay. I don't know if he's going to get that much more out of him than Moyes did. And for that reason, based on the competition around and above West Ham, I'm going to have to give him 10th. Going forward, we have the next spot, which is 11th. Not 11th, it's 9th, my bad. 9th place, I am going to go for Brighton. Brighton have a new coach, Fabian Hürzeler. He took over from Roberto De Zerbi, who stepped down at the end of this last season. He's at Marseille now. What to say about Brighton? They've lost Pascal Gross, who has gotten a lot of goals from midfield for them over the past few seasons. Beyond that, I mean, I can't really think of any major moves or kind of steps that they've taken to bolster their squad. Mats Wiefer is the one that actually does stand out. They've signed Yankuba Minta from Newcastle as well. Barco's officially done back in January. So really only Yakuba Minta and Mats Wiefer. Do I think that either of them kind of move the needle? No. Obviously, they've lost Ansu Fati, who's gone back on loan to gone back from his loan to Barcelona. So for that reason, I mean, all in all, I can't really see Brighton finishing further up the table than 9th. But yeah, I think 9th is fair for them, especially under a new coach. It's going to be a bit of a transition year. Anyways, 8th place. This also might be a little controversial, but let me explain myself. 8th place is Man United. I don't think they're going to get a European Cup spot this season. Why? Honestly, we've all seen how Man United have had kind of these just unbelievable injury crises over the last couple of seasons. They signed Lenioro, who I think is a really talented prospect. I think he could be one of the best center backs in the world at one point. Um, the issue is he gets injured immediately. They've gotten some other people. I believe Martin has picked up a slight knock. Hoyland's injured, if I'm not mistaken. I just have a feeling that this season for United, based on the fact that Euro's out for a while, based on the fact that they're going to be competing with, you know, squads that I think, for lack of a better term, are just a bit more high quality than them. I think the injuries are just going to wrap up again. I could sense it for United. There hasn't been necessarily too many moves that have really like been awe-inspiring. Xerxes there, sure, but how good is he going to be in his first season? Tough to say. I just feel like every side ahead of United have a better team, have maybe a better coach, and just have a better shot at finishing closer to the top of the table. So now we're going to get into the Conference League spot. Who do I get in at 7th? Who do I think is going to be 7th place for the 24-25 season? And who will get the first of the European Cup spots? For me, I'm going to have to go with none other than Aston Villa. Aston Villa, they're in the Champions League this season. They have a really good squad. They've signed Amadou Onana. They've obviously lost Douglas Luiz, who's gone over to Juventus. But they have gotten Samuel Elling Jr., who's a very good prospect, and another solid midfielder from Juventus as well. They have a few different players that they've gone out and signed, and some moves that they've made. Ian Matson's another one of them at left back that I honestly rate. I rate a lot. I think that they'll be good, but at the same time, juggling Champions League, it's a new beast for a lot of these players. The injuries that comes with that, the fatigue, the travel, the psychological aspect of playing in Europe, all that compounding, I think we'll see a bit of, some eye off the ball from Aston Villa in the league. And that's fair. It's understandable. I just think that's the most likely thing that's going to happen with them this season. Maybe they get out of the Champions League group stage and maybe they get an easy tie against some kind of team out the groups, win that, and then get knocked out. And then by the time that they're there, they've gotten some injuries. They've kind of become fatigued, and all the emotions of it just kind of sees them finish a little further down the table this year. 6th place for me, I flip-flopped between who I wanted in 6th and 5th, but both of them are getting Europa League, so it doesn't really matter. But for me, in 6th place, I am going to go with Newcastle United. Newcastle, really solid squad. They're linked to Mark Yehi now. They were linked to Joe Gomez for a bit. They have a lot of money. They can invest it in tons of players. I think they're going to invest it really wisely to finish out the window as well. And I'm pretty sure they don't have any European football. No, they have none. Neither do United. Did I say United had European football? Was I tripping? Or did they qualify by winning in... I don't know with United. United's tough to say because they might have gotten through by the cups to like Conference League, Europa League. I don't know the specifics. But Newcastle definitely don't have European football. And I think they are going to kind of ease past a lot of those injuries they had last season. They're going to be in a spot where I could just see it kind of clicking a bit more for some of these players. Tonali's back as well. That's going to be massive. Their midfield's going to be a big threat and very industrious. So why not? Isak is really good too. I really rate him. I just think that they could use maybe some more depth on the right wing. Besides that, they are definitely going to be a threatening side. Once again, St. James Park is almost certainly going to be one of the hardest places to go in the entire league for an away fixture. So, yeah, 6th place seems pretty fair. 5th place, Sorry, Tottenham, but I could see Tottenham finishing fifth. I think that this squad has some really good players in it. Son, obviously the talisman, the best of the bunch. Madison's really solid as well. And I think some of their players that have had really good seasons last year, Vicario, Van de Ven, Udogi, I think they'll continue to take steps forward. For me, why do I see Tottenham maybe not finishing further up the table? I just think that the Europa League will kind of add this layer of a needed rotation, and that will, bring about maybe injuries, fatigue, all the other works. I don't know how well they'll be able to manage that, like throughout the course of the whole season. Obviously, I would imagine they'd want to go all the way to the final of the Europa League. That'd be a huge get for Postecoglou if he's able to win that. We'll see, though. Who knows? Now we are into the top four, and in fourth place, I am going to put Chelsea. Chelsea, I think a lot of people are underestimating them. Enzo Maresca, while he might not be the most kind of tactically experienced coach in terms of, just actual coaches, games coached as a manager, he has, studied under Pep. He was his assistant at a point. He had a really good season with Leicester last year. I could see his philosophy translating really well at Chelsea. A 4-2-3-1 is almost certainly going to be played there. And I think some players at Chelsea are really, really, really just being overlooked. Specifically Christopher Nkunku. Nkunku, I think he's fit right now. Reece James is fit. I think a lot of these players for Chelsea that are coming back to fitness, who are fit going into this season, are going to contribute a big, big, big portion towards Chelsea's push. They're going to be absolutely critical players, I think, Reece James and Christopher Nkunku, amongst some other players across the pitch. There's so many players at Chelsea. I'd be here all day if I gave my thoughts on all of them. But I just think that their squad's slightly overlooked. Palmer, Mudryk, Jackson, Nkunku, Reece James, Malo Gusto, even Cucurella, who I think got a lot of flack last season, then went on to have an incredible Euros. There is a level of quality at Chelsea that is untapped. I could see Maresca being the guy to kind of help this team graduate back into some level of normality. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the normalcy just never kind of comes back to Chelsea and they sack Maresca by October or the end of October, like Halloween. So yeah, that's my thought process on that. Now the top three, I'm just going to put them all in order in the way I think they're going to finish and give my thoughts on all three of them really quick. So I'll place third, second, and then first. So in third place, I have Liverpool. In second place, I have Arsenal. And in first place, I have Manchester City. Start with my club, Liverpool. Why do I have Liverpool third? A few reasons. Not a lot of signings. I don't think we were going into last season. I don't think we were contenders. I didn't think we were contenders, I should say. We ended up being pseudo contenders at the end of the season. But I didn't think we were contenders when we were under a system with Klopp where, then we had invested a bit more at least. We still kind of could have used some more investment. But this season, we haven't invested at all. A lot of question marks as to how we're going to finish up the season. Will the team actually back Arne Slot? I don't know. I think Liverpool could still use a defensive mid, a center back, and maybe another right winger before we could really be competing at the highest level of the Premier League, competing for the title. There are players that I think could make that step up, but within the squad, like within the youth structure, but I don't know if that's guaranteed. That's always, you're always just kind of hoping with that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Liverpool, really. I think they're going to be pretty decent this season, but I don't think they're going to be close to the Arsenal or City level. I think Arsenal will finish in second, primarily because they have not fixed their whole striker conundrum, because God knows who's starting up front. Is it Kai Havertz? Is it Gabriel Jesus? Is it God? Nketiah is leaving, so God knows who else they'll be putting through the middle. I think they should go out and sign a striker if they want to win the league this season. Someone like Victor Gyökeres could really do them a world of good. Go out and sign Solanke, with Spurs sniffing around. If you sign Solanke, he's guaranteed to get you 10, 15 goals. He'd be a fantastic addition to Arsenal as well. But I don't think they're going to do that. They signed Calafiore. They've leaned into the defensive reinforcements. It's an okay signing, but it's not the signing they need. And yeah, because of that, I'm going to have to give them second. And City, even though City are maybe set to lose Julian Alvarez, maybe set to lose Ederson to the Saudi Pro League. Julian Alvarez is linked to Atletico Madrid, by the way, if you're so curious. But Ederson may be going to the Saudi Pro League. Julian Alvarez may be going to Atletico Madrid. When I look at that squad still, and I look at the fact that Pep is still the coach, I just can't see any team being able to put up enough fight to consistently kind of keep up with the pace of City this season. I'm going to be honest with you. Pep has done it week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, season in, season out, continuously. He has not really stopped. Jurgen has kind of given him some challenges here and there. Arteta kind of scared him once or twice. I think there were even Conte. He got a title. Leicester got a title one time. Besides that, man, I mean, he's impervious, and I think he's really going to be, with no Jurgen Klopp there, I mean, his only competitions are Arteta, who used to basically just kind of fetch his coffee. So for me, it's pretty obvious that City's winning the league. It's going to be boring if they do, but I think it's the most realistic prediction to make. If you want to make your own predictions, the link will be in the comment. If you want to make your own predictions, the link will be in the comments and in the strip. If you want to make your own prediction, the link will be in the description below. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below with all your thoughts on my predictions and for your thoughts for this upcoming season. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Sideline Sedo. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.